this is Johnny, my best friend. He's gonna working on the Phantom 2 gimbal system installation, right?
We're here today, yep, with Willie, and we are going to install the Zemuse gimbal. It is the DJI H3-3D Zemuse gimbal.
Yeah. Here is all the instructions.
Okay, lay out the pieces.
Which is basically nothing. just show you how to fly. So we might have to look online.
So I can already see here that these are the rubber pillow balls. These pillow balls are different firmness. You can see this one is gray. It's got a 40 degree, 50 degree. These offer different dampening vibration depending upon which ones you use to either slow down some of the jello effect or minimize it. These actually go inside there to prohibit the gimbal from dropping out of the pillow balls and losing your gimbal. So we have a bit of not too much reading to do here. DJI is the Apple of the multi-rotor industry. They pretty much keep it as simple as possible. Beautiful packaging.
Yeah, nice box.
Beautiful packaging. And as you can see, there's already some white pillow balls on there. These feel like they're the most rigid. These feel a little soft. Actually, I take that back. These gray ones feel a little harder, and of course these black ones are even softer. So we shall see about that. Beautiful gimbal here. Let's see if we can get this out gingerly. There we go. Okay, so as we continue our H3-3D gimbal installation, this is probably the most concerning part of the whole installation. We have a very tiny ribbon cable here that we have to be very, very careful in removing so we can plug it into the camera. You have to be very careful, take your time in getting this off. Once you get underneath it a little bit, continue to pull it off and pull it away gently. You want to get this tape off of here without damaging the connector. Very tricky here. Just take your time. There's no rush on that one. Okay, the actual connector are these multiple brass edges right there. That's the important piece, and this is a very fragile flat cable we have to be careful of. Before we go any further with that cable, we're going to mount the camera onto the gimbal itself. Take our HD and our whatever you call it, GoPro Hero 3, and we just place it right on there. Then we're going to take our M 2.5 by 6.3 screws, there's 4 of them, and our bracket. We'll open the bracket. Bracket's pretty straightforward. Goes right over the camera, as so. We'll take these 2 of these screws. One of the nice things about DJI products is you'll notice on the screws themselves they've got a blue Loctite. That blue Loctite prohibits the screws from vibrating and coming out. There'll be 2 screws that go in the back. Let me get my screwdriver here. It's always best to use a good quality nut driver, or I should say socket driver. These are metric. Start the first one. Don't tighten it. Put the second one in. Get that one going, and then you should be able to tighten them both down. That one's good. You don't need to over tighten it again. Remember, the anti-lock is already on there. Okay, that's now installed. We can still get our camera lens on and off, and that's mounted on the gimbal itself. Now we'll take the access panel off the side of the GoPro. If I can get it off, there we go. And we will install the plug. Key to this plug again is making sure we get this little connector in place and click down. Got to orient it properly. In this case, we know the plug has to go in just like this, so we'll pull it back. We'll pull this cable back ever so carefully, slide it into the connector. You can see it's in all the way, and now the black tab in the back completes the connection. At this point, we'll plug it right into the side, and that's done. One thing I wanted to go over before we move on to the next step is in that bag where they provided you with the video output connector, they also provide you with an additional cable in case you damage the one that was in there. So good idea to save that and make sure nothing happens to that. So we'll put that in a safe place along with these pillow balls that we won't be using at this time. So we're going to put the gimbal aside for a minute. Put it over here, and we're going to move on to the Phantom. Here we have our Phantom 2, fresh out of the box. We haven't done anything yet to configure or program. We are actually going to jump right into installing the gimbal before we do basically anything else. So, first step is they have already nicely provided a interface cable right on the bottom of the Phantom. And we're going to peel off that tape and free up that connector so that we can move forward to the next step. Be careful when pulling off this tape. It's stuck pretty well. We don't want to damage the wires or the connector. So we can move that connector off to the side for the time being. Okay. Now, we're going to take our gimbal mount with the white pillow balls. And as you can see, there's two holes that are closer together than the wider ones, which match the pattern right here. And that's exactly like that. But before we actually mount that, we're going to have to take these retainer clips. There are 4 in the bag, but we are only going to use 2 at the moment. And those 2, it's important that we place them into the pillow balls diagonally across from each other, and most importantly, we want to make sure that they are installed at M1 and M3 respectively from the battery pack here. M1's in the front corner and M3's in the back corner. We're now going to use the M3 by 5s to mount this to the bottom of the Phantom. These screws again come with blue Loctite already applied to the threads, so we're good to go. These use a Phillips head screw rather than a metric Allen, metric hex, whatever you want to call it. We'll start one. Start 2. Start 3. And we will continue to the 4th screw. Once we get all the screws started, we can then start slowly in a crisscross pattern, tightening these down. And again, be careful not to over tighten, making sure they're all seated properly within the frame of the gimbal controller, gimbal mount. Okay. Next step, we're actually going to take our gimbal and we're going to mount it right underneath. Turn it upside down. You can pull these protective strips off and place them aside. They're just to keep these nice end caps looking pretty. We want to make sure the GoPro is facing forward and that the back upright connector is facing back toward the battery. We'll basically drop this down on here, and one at a time we will make sure the pillow ball mounts are fully seated at each corner. Sometimes it helps to use a little screwdriver or something to push them in so they're fully seated. Make sure this is fully up. Again, this is the retainer. That's that one. I'm going to turn the entire Phantom around to get to the other side and repeat the process on these two. There's one. Okay. Now that we have the gimbal mounted, we're going to take two retainer clips. And you have to be careful in this step that we don't push these on too far, or it will actually prohibit the movement of the pillow balls. So we're going to push up in the bottom. This goes on very much like a hat with the raised part up. It's hard to see, but we're going to click that on. You'll hear it click once and one click. They should be loose, so they should be floating around. These retainer clips are the sole purpose of maintaining. Okay, again, nice and loose. If this should ever get in a crash and this was to come crashing down, these wouldn't rip off and fly away. They would be retained. The GoPro can never become disconnected from the Phantom because of these clips. Okay, we're back here. We are now going to install the distribution board. I'm going to take a brief minute because this distribution board, which can be mounted inside, can also be mounted outside, which is what we're going to do. But before doing so, I am actually going to clean both surfaces with some denatured alcohol that I have over here. Good idea. We are going to place this board directly over the serial number on the bottom of the Phantom. Great idea that Willie suggested is to take a picture of the serial number and this little sticker on the bottom of your Phantom for future use. Got to be careful when you wipe it. You don't want to wipe it too hard. We're not looking to remove the serial number. We're just looking to remove any grease or fingerprints that may have been resided from either one of us touching it. We'll do the same thing here. And it's dry. We'll put that aside. And now we can move forward with the adhesive tape. Although I do not like this tape. It is wider than the actual board itself. So, because I am particular about things, we will trim this to fit. Better. Okay. So the easiest way is to remove the adhesive backing. Try not to drop it like I did. Center it on the board. Press it into place. Move the other side. And very carefully place it in the middle of your Phantom. Right about there. That's it. Give it a little push in here. Be careful not to push too hard. I don't like to push on any electrical components because they're all soldered to the board, and pressing on any of those components could actually crack a solder joint. Press gently. It doesn't need much pressure at all around the outside of the board where the adhesive tape would be. Okay, lastly, we need to connect with the small cable provided. The 8-pin, I believe this is 8 pins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8-pin connector from the gimbal to the board, and then lastly the board to the actual Phantom itself. Be very careful when orienting these pieces, and I think it's going to be easiest to do the gimbal first. When you look at these connectors, you'll see that the holes are actually favored toward one side. The holes on this connector right here are closer to the top. When you look at the connector in here, the pins are closer to the top. So we want to plug it in exactly like that. If we did it the other way, we'd be fighting it. We might bend the pins. We would certainly have it in upside down. So line it up. It doesn't take much pressure. I'll move it down here so you can see it. I like to use my fingers on either side with gentle pressure and just wiggle it and walk it in. And once it's seated, you know it's in. You'll know it's in tight. Okay, lastly, we're going to do the same thing here. Again, look at the connectors on the end. We know they're closer to this side along with the connectors on this side. It's pretty simple. We're just going to plug this right in like that. Use my fingertip on either side to walk the thing right down. Come around here a little bit. And it's in. It's nice and firmly seated. Lastly, again, notice the connectors down and down. We'll put it in the same spot, push down, and that pretty much completes the installation of your GoPro 3 gimbal, HD 3D Zen Muse gimbal on the Phantom 2. Some great pictures and safe flying.